eclipsing, you know, when it was like a crescent.
Yes.
It was feeling pretty awe-inspiring.
Okay. Yeah, it was funny because when it first came up, you could see everything was, white, on the ground and that. And then when it was starting to happen, then it's like, oh, it's getting dark out there. Which it is already dark already, but it's kind of funny. It's like, wow, that moon made a big difference on, having light,
Yeah.
especially when there's like basically a full moon too on top of it.
Yeah. I was taking a picture of a total lunar eclipse. Can't remember how many years ago, 6 or 7 years ago, I guess, or maybe 7 or 8 years ago in Southern California when the eclipse was just after sunset.
Oh,
And so we got really good pictures because it was still enough ambient light that it balanced out.
okay. Interesting. Cool.
Yeah, this one was 2 in the morning, so it was very dark when it was eclipsed and it was very high up.
Yes. Yeah, it was really high up. You're right, and almost straight up. I remember with my dad and then with my mom, I remember, oh, I don't know, this was over 20, 30, 30, 40 years. I don't know. It's been a while. Uh, it was probably the most reddest I've ever seen it. And it wasn't too high up. I mean, let's say maybe about 40 degrees high or 45, but like that Friday, it was pretty high up.
Yeah, I was giving a photo pills talk, Jeff, to the Menominee Falls group a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
talking about the eclipse. And I would like to have been able to go up to Holy Hill and shoot the lunar eclipse over there, but it was so high up, it would have been way high up
Yeah,
above
would have been too separated. You need to get it early when it's earlier in the evening or
right,
lower. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it's hard to get that with Holy Hill. I mean, I lived there for 42 years and I never got a decent moonshot with Holy Hill because whenever it was low enough, I was doing something else.
But do you know
So,
a photographer named Steve Mann? I've
no,
been
I don't.
following I've been following him on Facebook, and he's been shooting some really great pictures of the moonrise over Holy Hill, and he's doing it from the highway quite a distance away. And I kind of want to go up there and I kind of know the spot, trace back the
Yeah,
spot.
yeah, off of K, there's a spot where you can park, and then you have usually it's a cornfield, sometimes it's a wheat field, and Holy Hill's maybe a half mile away, and you're seeing the front of Holy Hill, so that works out nice. So you're what is that direction? That would be west of Holy Hill,
Right.
and that's the spot I shoot from most of the time because you get a little higher up, but you get a nice foreground of the farmer's field, and then you get trees, and then you get Holy Hill. And yeah, if you time it right, then you can get the moon, behind Holy Hill, which is
Yeah,
nice.
that's what I've seen his picture.
But it only happens very seldom. So
once a year or so. Yeah.
yeah, it's something like that. And so if you're not around, you don't get it. All right, we're going to get started here today. Welcome everybody to the Digital Forum. If there's anybody else that would like to join the panel, just raise your Zoom hand and we'll bring you in. Today we have Marty, the guy that helps me with everything on here, talking about Drone 101. A couple announcements before we get started. If you're in a Wacko Camera Club and you want to enter the Wacko competition, you got today and tomorrow to get those images in. The uploader closes on the 23rd at midnight. So get your images in. It is a month early because I had a conflict in May and we had to move the competition up a month. Let's see, what else? Wanted to say that if you wanted to review these videos quicker than I can get them up on the website, I'm suggesting that you subscribe to the Wacko YouTube channel. That way you can go right to that channel and you'll see all the same videos that we've had going all the way back to when we started right on the YouTube channel. And it would be nice to get everybody to subscribe to our channel. Maybe one day we can get monetized with it, but we want to get this thing out to everybody. So
and
please
I've been
subscribe.
subscribed. Yeah, I've been subscribed for a long time, Jeff, and it pops up pretty, almost right after the meeting. You can already get the video. So
Right. Where it takes me about a week. I've run into some difficulties. I actually have to download the live stream and then re-upload it to be able to connect it to our website. And that gets to be a pain, and it takes quite a bit of time because these YouTube videos are pretty big. So that's why sometimes you don't see the stuff up right away. And it's because I haven't had time to download it, re-upload it, and get it going for some reason. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. You'll see it right away if you want to go back to it. One other thing, we have a Chris Scott talking about On1 software, and he's requested that we fill out a Google form. I sent it the last 2 times. I sent the email out. If you could click on that form and just fill it out. It's a couple of quick questions. It helps him to design the talk more to our group. He's willing to do the talk for free. So the least we can do is at least fill out that Google form. I will have it in the next emails when I talk about him coming on for next month. I usually put those emails out the middle of the month.
And Jeff, we should mention that the questions he's asking aren't just specific to On1. They're more about photography in general, what things he could do on his channel to help train us.
Right.
So it's not only about On1. So please take some time and fill that out for Chris. That would be a great way for us to say thank you to him.
Yeah, and he does have a good channel. We'll make sure we get that out to you. I'm trying to remember the name of the channel. My mind's gone blank. It's
Free Will Photos.
Free Will Photos. So check him out. He's got a lot of good stuff on On1 software. If you're looking for a different software to be able to process your images. So yeah, please go back, pull that email up, and fill out the form. It does not. I filled it out, and it does not take long.
No, it doesn't take long at all. He does sometimes get in a little bit into Lightroom when he's comparing things that On1 can do that Lightroom can do and things like that. So where he's really mostly keyed into On1, he does venture off and know about other programs as well.
So yeah, he does a good job on putting his YouTube stuff together too. Mm-hmm. I've been impressed with him. So, and that was thanks to Marty. He found him and turned me on to him, and Chris has been really nice to deal with so far by emails. So with that, we'll get started. Everybody knows Marty. He's been co-hosting with me for, I think, practically since we started, and he's a very good drone photographer. So he's going to talk about drones 101. So take it away, Marty.
So I don't know about a good drone photographer, but I'm a drone photographer, and I'm like everybody, learning as I go. I do pretty good with it, and in 6 years that I've been flying, I've learned quite a bit. But one thing that I have encountered over the course of the time I've been involved with drones is really the lack of knowledge to the basics of just getting started with drones. a lot of the members in this group, it seems like whenever we start talking about drones, bring up questions and whatnot. So I thought I would put together a little program really focused on just starting out with drone photography. And I'm going to take us basically from, okay, I'm thinking about going to Best Buy and buying a drone to, all right, now that I got the drone, what's the next step? What do I really need to know before I start flying and all that? So I think we're probably going to fill up best part of an hour maybe, but a lot of it just depends on questions. And certainly as we're going along, feel free to just pop your questions into the Q&A or the chat, or those in the panel could just pipe in, and I'll see what I can answer for you. I will say, I'm all self-taught on this. So I've learned a lot. I know a lot, but I certainly don't know everything. So I guess if you come up with a question that stumps me, I'll search out an answer, and certainly we'll get back to you with it. So that said, let me get into my little little keynote here. And
Looks good.
just want to check my sound to make sure the sound is there so I can hide the floating meeting panel control.
Yeah.
All righty. So learn the basic rules of and regulations of drones. So, oops, wrong keyboard, Marty. Here I am flying my Mavic 2 Pro, which was the first drone that I bought in 2019. And it was a great drone to start out with. It's still a great drone, very powerful. Hasselblad, it's the first Hasselblad I've ever owned. It's got a Hasselblad camera on it. That's exciting. And if we go the right direction here, so, owning a drone could be a fun and rewarding hobby where, when done right, you can capture some pretty amazing images that can only be seen, found, and captured using a drone. Owning a drone, though, does come with responsibility and a myriad of rules and regulations that you must follow in order to ensure safety for yourself and those around you. Flying a drone makes you part of utilizing the U.S. national airspace, which is regulated by the FAA. So, in order to fly in the same airspace, as with all the other aircraft, commercial jets, private planes, helicopters, hot air balloons, all the good flying machines, we need to know, understand, and follow the rules. To this end, the FAA has a website specifically for drones. That's the FAA Drone Zone dash access, blah, blah, you get it. So I will mention this. I do have all these text slides I put together as a PDF that I'll put into the chat, and you guys can all take, because all these links are all live links, so they can take you to what I'm talking about here. So that said, as you can see, drone ownership is not as simply going to the store, picking up a drone, throwing it up in the air, and starting to fly it. You need to know a little bit more about what's going on in the airspace in order to do that. So that's kind of what we're going to start with. So one of the things you need to do is register your drone, maybe. So remember, the FAA is a government institution, so there's always a lot of maybes about what you have to do and not have to do. So how do you know? Well, if your drone weighs 250 grams or less, and you are going to fly your drone for strictly recreational purposes, you don't need to register it. So what is a 250 gram drone? Well, that would be like the Mavic Minis, the DJI Mini drone series, their Neo, some of the really smaller drones. So, and what does it mean to fly recreationally? Well, we're going to go in a little bit more into detail about flying recreationally versus commercially. But there are two different kind of categories for flying your drone. So again, if you're just going to throw your drone up, take some fun pictures, and maybe put them on your Facebook page or share them with family and friends, that's flying commercially. If you're going to do anything, in short, that is in the furtherance of a business. So if you have a friend that's a realtor and he says, hey, can you take some pictures of my property and I want to use them as a listing, that is commercial, whether he pays you or not. That is what's considered commercial. One example of commercial. Anything that can be monetized in one form or another would be considered commercial in the FAA's eyes. And I'm hoping throughout this program, I'm not going to bore you to death with a lot of these statistics, but there is a lot to know before flying a drone. One of those things is flying in the given airspace that we have. So on this little chart here, you can see that we've got a few inverted cones, so to speak. And the pink area is Class G airspace, and that's the airspace that we generally fly drones in, and we can fly up to 400 feet above ground level. So when you get into some of these other airspaces, you are required to get permission to fly in those airspaces because you can interfere with manned aircraft. One of the exceptions of the 400 feet above ground level, oh, I forgot. I have a fancy new tool here, if I can remember how to turn it on. Enable it. There we go. So as you can see on the far left side of the chart, there's a little radio tower, and it's showing the drone flying over that radio tower. So the one exception to flying up to 400 feet is if you have a building or a tower that you need to fly near or above, you can fly 400 feet above the tallest point of that tower, as long as you're flying within 400 feet laterally of it. So I know that's a little bit confusing, but this is where knowing and understanding the rules really makes a big difference. So that is kind of airspace in a brief glimpse. I don't know if anybody has any questions at this point or not, but I'm gonna really overwhelm you with rules here.
Marty, can I ask
Yes.
you to repeat what you just said about flying? Does that include flying over buildings?
Correct. Yep. So if
I-
you're flying, let's say you're downtown Milwaukee, I don't know what the tallest building is down there, but if it's taller than 400 feet, then the rule states you can fly 400 feet above that building as long as you stay within 400 feet of that building.
Well, I didn't know that, but that doesn't include if you're in the 400 foot around an airport, right? That's a strict limit, I believe.
Well, right. Airports are going to be a little different because, and we'll get into that just a little bit, but when you get into anywhere into these, so you can fly at a Class G airport. So what's a Class G airport? So that would be a small, untowered airport, would be kind of a Class G. So for instance, near me, we have Stevens Point has a municipal airport. That's a Class G airport. So I can fly near that airport without getting, without requesting authorization. If I try to fly near Mitchell, within 5 miles of that airport, you have to get permission. And then within that airport, there's different levels in the sky. There's 100 feet, or as you get, I guess, as you move in from the outside to the inside of the airport, your heights are going to go down and down and down until you get towards the center of the airport, where you basically aren't going to fly at a towered airport. So Class B, C, and D, really, that's determined by the size of the airport, the air traffic congestion around an airport, and all that. Class A, you can see we're never going to fly our drones anywhere up into the Class A or even into the Class E airspace, because you just aren't going to fly up to 14,000 feet. You're lucky if you get 400 feet out of it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just learned something. Thank you.
All
Marty,
right,
we got
we can quit now.
Marty. Yeah, we got Richard Fisher asked, "How is ground level measured? What about hills and valleys? when ground levels change too. It's
Well,
does
it's a what would be the correct word? I mean, wherever you're at is your ground level. So if you're on hills, if you're 400 feet up on a hill, you can fly 400 feet above that hill. Now, this other determination on here, this MSL, it means sea level. So that too is used at times for knowing how high you're going, but flying above ground level and flying above mean sea level are two entirely different things. So mean sea level is basically, that's where all heights start, regardless of where you're at in the world, from the sea level. So we're going to be concerned about what above ground level here with flying drones. Great question, though. Okay, so what are the rules for flying recreationally? And this is all directly from the FAA's Drone Zone website. And I'm not going to read all of this verbatim, but I'm just going to cover some highlighted points here. Number one, fly for recreational purposes, your personal enjoyment only. As I mentioned earlier, if you're going to do things for commercially, that's a little different. We'll be getting into that as well. Keep your drone within visual line of sight. So why is that important? Where I live, I have medical helicopters fly directly above my house on a regular basis. So you have to fly within visual line of sight, and you have to give way to and do not interfere with manned aircraft. Well, how am I going to know that aircraft is flying unless I can hear it? And they will come up pretty darn quick. It's amazing if you watch in the sky how fast a small helicopter or small plane will intrude upon your quote unquote airspace if you're up flying at 400 feet. And the medical helicopters aren't necessarily that high. A lot of times they're 200 to 300 feet, even though they should be a little bit higher. It just depends on where they're going and whatnot. So you just have to be aware of that. So if you're flying your drone, and my drones, I can fly 5 miles away from me. Would I ever want to do that? Heck no, because first of all, if something ever happened, I'm never seeing that drone again. Second of all, it's against the rules to fly it beyond your visual line of sight. So my Mini 3 is a lot smaller than my Mavic 2. So my line of sight for the Mini is nowhere near as far as it is for the Mavic. And you just need to have a visual sight of that so that you can bring that down as soon as you see or hear other aircraft in your airspace. And if you're 2-3 miles away, you don't know where you're at. You don't know what's in the sky near you.
Marty, we got Mike McGill wants to know, do drones have height sensors on them? How do you know how high 400 feet is?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Good point.
So good point. Yep. So within the software, again, so I'm flying DJI drones. There are other brands of drones out there, Altool and Hover Air. There's a few others, but I'm partial to the DJI drones. So on my controller, it will tell you what height you're at. It'll tell you how far away from you the drone is. It'll tell you direction of the drone. There's it's pretty detailed information, and it's all working off of satellites, so GPS satellites. So, for instance, when I launch, the drone updates my quote unquote home point, the point that I launched the drone from, and I'll go up, I'll fly out, I'll come back. Well, I have a button I can hit to say return to home. I'll hit that button, and that thing will land literally within inches of where I took off because of the GPS satellites. So it knows exactly where you're at all given time.
Okay. Paul, if you've got a question, just please put it in the Q&A. Thank you.
Continue on with our, no, that's all right, with our just basic rules for flying recreationally. Again, you want to fly at or below 400 feet in Class G uncontrolled airspace. The FAA has what they call the trust test. And what it's doing is just testing your basic knowledge of these rules. And you cannot fail this test. It takes you, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes to take it, something like that. So when you buy your drone and you go to FAA's Drone Zone website, you can take this trust test, and you have to carry proof of it that you did pass the test, because, you know, if you're out flying somewhere and your local constable stops you and says, "What are you doing here?" You know, you say, "I'm just up taking pictures of the park." And they can ask you, "Well, I want to see proof of this test," and you should be able to provide that to them. But you can't fail it. So as you're going through the test, if you get a question incorrect, it will show you the correct answer before it moves on to the next question. So the FAA, in their mindset, is they want to educate you. They don't want to fine you. So they want to just make sure that everybody flying knows and understands the rules. So last rule here is, you know, don't operate your drone in a manner that endangers the safety of you, anybody around you, or the national airspace. One thing I don't have in here, I think I should have, is flying over people. So it is not allowable to fly over people. And it's really a matter of safety. So even though a 250-gram drone may not seem like it weighs a lot, if you're at 400 feet or 300 feet or whatever, if something happens and all of a sudden that drone stops operating and it falls out of the sky, it is going to hurt somebody. And another example of what a little Mini 3 could do is, you may remember in the news not too long ago with the wildfires out west, there was a drone that hit a firefighting aircraft, put a big hole in the wing. That was a Mini 3 Pro. Just a little drone hit that aircraft and it blasted right through that sheet metal like it was nothing. So you cannot fly over people, pretty much, plain and simple, and you really don't want to do it. And a funny anecdote with that is last summer I was up in Wausau at the kayak races they were having up there, and there was some local guy flying his little drone around right over the people and everything, and I stopped to talk to him, and I said, "You know, you're not allowed to fly over people." And his response to me was, "Who says?" And I just was dumbfounded. I'm like, "Well, the FAA says." So I guess what that told me was, this is a guy who just went to Best Buy, bought his drone, and decided he's a drone pilot, he's going to start flying. No regard for rules or regulations or anything. I mean, there was a number of things he was not doing correctly. What I should have done was gone and found a cop and reported him, but I was too busy taking my own pictures, so I didn't do that. But it just was an example of, here's somebody that just apparently didn't take his trust test and has no idea what he's doing. So how do you request permission to fly in airspace that is not controlled? And I guess I will show you an app for this and kind of show you how it works. So I'll stop sharing this, but again, this PDF will have all this information and whatnot, but two really good apps for being able to achieve getting Lance approval is AirAware or Air Control. Pretty much the same outfit doing both apps, but they are a contractor for the government that put this app together. So I'm just going to stop sharing this. I'm going to share my iPad and show you what that looks like. This is Jeff, where I need to get a Stream Deck.
Yeah.
So here I am at my little my little house in Junction City. This little green indicator down here, get out of the way, green indicator down here at the bottom tells me that I'm good to fly here. There's no restrictions. There's no warnings. There's no NOTAMs, no notifications, airmen. So I can fly there without a problem. We're going to go up here, and this area here is Central Wisconsin Airport. So if I decided that that is where I wanted to fly, and I guess my function key control. You can see here, this is 400 degrees, or 400 degrees, 400 feet, 300 feet, 50 feet, 200 feet, 300. So this is what I was saying earlier, is you get closer into an airport, the heights you're going to be allowed to fly at are going to be different. So if I fly anywhere near within this blue circle, this is an area that I would have to request Lance authorization for. So to do that, you can see down here, if I click on Lance, it's going to ask me, am I flying commercially or recreationally? So let's say I wanted to say recreationally, and it's going to say, all right, how high do you need to fly? I'm going to say I want to fly at 350 feet. And probably because I'm not at a point where, let's see if I move this over here.
Yeah, Marty, I always have trouble moving that mark on my phone. I wish they would build in a better into the app way to move that.
Yeah, I'm on my iPad trying to do this, and I'm not having much luck. But I'm not gonna waste a lot of time. I just wanted to make sure you understood this is a process you're gonna have to go through, and why you might have to go through it. So I'll just zoom this out a little bit here, so you can see, all these little different ones are airports. The red ones are no-fly zones. So this is down in Fort McCoy. So military bases you're not going to fly at. But you can see the different size airports and the surroundings around them. So, if we go down to Milwaukee area, because most of you are going to be more familiar with that. Obviously this is General Mitchell. I don't know, Clint, maybe you'll tell me which of these two airports are.
The northern one is Timmerman Field.
This one here.
Yeah. And the other one is Waukesha Airport.
Yep, that is correct.
Okay. So you notice the ones in yellow then, I don't know that you're going to need Lance at those or not. You might. Those are smaller airports, so you may or may not need it, but you need to, if you're near these airports, and I know, Dreama, we've talked about this a number of times, the areas you can and can't fly, and I'm sure you run into this yourself.
Marty, I think those yellow are the stadiums, or Pfizer, or
okay.
something.
All right.
I could be wrong.
That might be. So those are kind of restricted flight areas, so you can't be flying like over Miller Park. You can't be flying over Lambeau during games and things like that. So aside from the permanent areas that you need to get authorization for, there tend to be pop-up areas. For instance, the draft is coming to Green Bay, and I about guarantee that that's going to be restricted airspace for the week or so that goes on. So it's important to be checking these apps when you are going to fly, just to make sure there aren't any temporary flight restrictions, let alone your normal flight restrictions.
Yeah, we got Linnea saying that could be the West Allis would be the freighter hospitals, which they do have a heli.
Yep, they have a heliport. Yep. So in fact, that's exactly right. So there's a little helicopter there that's showing that there is a helipad there. So that, and then you're flying, within airspace that they are probably regularly commuting to and from.
Yeah.
So at lower elevations. So there could be a number of reasons why you have to be vigilant in those areas.
I think the yellow circles are for sports facilities, and yeah, they put the little helicopter. You see, there's another one over by the water,
Yep.
which is a hospital probably. I don't think they put circles around those though.
And it could be State Fair Park.
I
They
don't
probably
think those are marked on these maps. I've never seen them.
Yeah, I think that's right, but it could be general recreational facilities. I mean, you can see there's just a lot of little helicopters that are on here. So, but again, the big thing is you just need to be aware of your surroundings. Check your apps to make sure you have. This is a bombing range here, so you don't want to fly there. So, and it's a free app, so you don't have to pay anything for that. So, I'll go back to sharing my PowerPoint here.
While you're doing that, Richard Fisher asked, can you fly over an empty stadium?
Yeah.
And can a private organization limit your ability to fly over their site?
Technically, no, they can't. They have to. The FAA. So the FAA is who controls the airspace. So, for instance, a local municipality can't say you can't fly over our village or our city or our town. The FAA can say that. They can make a rule that says you cannot take off or land from within our village limits. But if you take off outside the limits and fly over that airspace, you can do that. So, can the Green Bay Packers say, at no point can you ever fly over our field? Technically, no, they can't say that. They can request from the FAA a permanent restriction for that. And that might be granted, but the organization can't say it can't just do that randomly.
I think, Marty, that app that you were using, I believe they list NOTAMs in there. Are you familiar with NOTAMs?
Yep. Noticed airmen. If there were NOTAMs, right, they would have popped up down in that lower left corner in the green area where it was a little triangle and it showed 0. If there were NOTAMs, it would show that.
Okay.
So, as you can see, there's a little bit more to it than just going to the store, buying a drone, throwing it up in the air, and flying. And it's really important that we follow the rules, because the more people who don't, the harder it's going to make it for everybody else that does want to fly. And they're not asking the world of us. They're just asking for some common sense things for us to do to be part of it. When you go drive a car, you have to follow the rules of the road, and it's not any different for flying a drone in the air.
Marty, one more thing. Mike McGill, who's a track photographer at Road America prohibits drone usage on or over the track. Could that be something that the FAA also?
So, as a private event, they can do that. They can say no photography. It's no different than walking in a museum and you see a sign that says no tripods. So, but again, if you start from outside the track, they're going to have a little harder time enforcing that. But that's such a sprawling area that, if you start from outside the track, chances are you aren't going to have visual line of sight of your drone, and you're already breaking the rules by doing that.
And plus, they got tons of people there, so you're not supposed to be flying over people. And man, one of those drones would hit a race car when they're going 100 some miles an hour. That's going to do some real damage. both
Oh, yeah.
car and people.
Car, people, drone, the whole works. Yeah, it's just not smart. I mean, the rules are in place for us to, for everybody to be safe. It's just really what it's all about. Okay. So I pretty much just said this. So what we're going to do now is, I'll just talk about this picture here a little bit. So I'm not flying over people. I picked a spot at the rodeo grounds here that is away from the people, and there's really nobody underneath me. I'm up, but I'm also zoomed in, so my Mini 3 can zoom, and so it looks like I'm a lot closer to the arena there than I actually am. And I also had a spotter with me, which we didn't really talk about that yet, but it is recommended that when you're flying that you have a visual observer. So somebody who can kind of watch if somebody approaching you as you're flying, looking up or going to walk underneath or whatnot. So when we're flying our drones, we're looking at the controller, we're looking at the drone, we're kind of our awareness to our surroundings is a little more limited. So it is advisable to have somebody with you when you're flying so that they can kind of help watch for the drone, watch for people and other distractions. So where it looks like I might be over people, I really am not over people here. Nope. I'm not even gonna give this anecdote because this is being recorded and I don't want to get people in trouble. I can tell you something that happened here that really shocked the heck out of me to a big organization here in the state, but I'm not gonna berate them. So flying, as I mentioned earlier, flying commercially is a little different than flying recreationally. There are actually, believe it or not, more rules involved for flying commercially than there are flying recreationally. Again, want to learn these rules. This is all done under U.S. Code CFR Part 107, and it's pretty involved. To do this, there's a test you have to take to become a certified Part 107 pilot. So it's not a license certification. That's the first misnomer that a lot of people say, well, do you have a license to fly it? No, I have a certification to fly it, just like you would have a certification to fly any aircraft, Cessna, jumbo jet, whatever. So it's a 60-question, 2-hour test that you have to take, and you need to achieve minimum of 70% correct on the test. And that's the first time you take it. And then you do have to renew it every two years, I think it is. I think I come up for renewal this year in July. The renewal is nowhere near as daunting as taking the initial test, but the amount of things you need to know to become a Part 107 pilot puts you somewhat just short of actually learning how to fly a small plane. You need to understand airspace, you need to understand weather, you need to understand a whole bunch of things that really you don't use in the day-to-day life of flying drones, but it's what's required in order to achieve your Part 107 certification. So some of the differences here would be operation at night. So up until relatively recently, we weren't allowed to fly drones at night. Now we can fly them at night as long as we have a flashing strobe on there that could be seen for 3 statute miles. And that is to let other aircraft in the sky know that, hey, there's something over there we got to avoid. I will say flying at night brings its own challenges. You, in the daytime, you could be watching your controller and, you can watch your horizon and whatnot. At nighttime, you lose that perspective. And for any of the airline pilots on the meeting with us today, I'm sure you can speak to that much better than I can. So again, you have to fly within visual line of sight. You have to yield right away to manned aircraft, operation over human beings. So there is a 4-part exception to flying over human beings, and the FAA. This is all still pretty new to the FAA, and you have to apply for a waiver to be able to do this, and that waiver needs to meet certain criteria. And the best example of that would be right now there are a handful of drones that a company makes a parachute for, so that if you're up flying and the drone experiences mechanical failure, it's going to start dropping out of the sky, obviously. Well, this parachute is designed so that as soon as it feels a drop in elevation, it's going to launch that parachute, allowing that drone to come back down to the ground in a slow and safe manner. So short of that, it's pretty tough to get a waiver to fly over people. You got to have a pretty darn good reason to the FAA to be able to allow that. And again, this will be something that as a Part 107 pilot, you can apply for, not as a recreational pilot. So if you're a recreational pilot, do not fly over people. Operations over moving vehicles. So that's another good one. You really can't be flying over moving vehicles, I guess would be the best way to put it. So you can traverse the roadway if there's vehicles coming, as long as you're continuing motion across that roadway. But you can't go and hover over that roadway with moving vehicles and film or shoot pictures. Again, it's just not allowed. So this category 1, 2, or 3, that I'm not even going to get into that. It's pretty involved, and that is the permits and the waivers, rather, to be able to do some of these things. Again, if you get into this a little bit more and you want to learn more about it, I would do my research if that's something you're interested in. But it does require specialized equipment and whatnot to be able to really achieve that waiver. So how do you become a Part 107 pilot? Well, you study. There are some companies out there that actually will help you study for this test for a fee. I will tell you, when I did mine, YouTube was my educator, and I watched probably, I can't tell you how many different videos over the course of a couple months before I took my test. I was able to pass it, but I would say in hindsight, I would have gone to one of these companies that helps train you, and it would have been a lot easier. Does cost you to take it $175. You have to renew it every 2 years, but there is no cost after the initial test. You do have to go to a certified tester. So I'm lucky enough that at Marshfield Airport, the gentleman who runs that airport is certified to administer the test. So I didn't have to go very far. You have to be able to read, write, and speak English for obvious reasons. And you have to be in good physical and mental condition. And I will mention that one of the rules for flying drones, whether it's recreationally or commercially, is you cannot be under the influence of drugs or alcohol when you're flying your drone, much, again, like driving your car. So, so you want to, study for that test. You want to be able to go to the testing facility with an appointment, take the test. Again, it's a 2-hour test. It's timed, and it's not an easy thing. I'm happy I did it. I'm happy I was successful doing it, but I can't begin to impress upon you how much information you need to know that you would never have thought you'd ever need to know to fly your drone. Again, a lot of this stuff will be in my little handout that I'm going to send out to you guys, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Registering your drone, though, that I want to spend some time on. You should register your drone, again, unless you're under 250 grams and you're only flying recreationally. But it costs you $5, and the registration is valid for 3 years. So it's not a big deal. You just go onto the Drone Zone website and you register it. You got to put in the serial number of the drone, your personal information, give them your $5, and away you go. They're going to give you a registration number. That number does have to be posted on the drone, on the exterior of the drone. So that is the one caveat. If you are registering your drone, or if you have to register it, you do want to have that. The only other caveat to not registering your drone is, and this is still kind of in a developmental phrase, but there's the FAA is setting up these FRIAs. Are basically, it could be an airfield or a big park somewhere that is dedicated for flying drones, and it might be also used for other radio controlled aircraft, little planes or helicopters or whatnot. So it's an area that the FAA has said, okay, if you're flying here, you don't need to register your drone. You need to follow the same rules. You can only fly up to 400 feet, whatnot. But it is really a very limiting area to fly within. So they said, okay, if you're going to fly here, you don't need to register your drone, but they do want you to follow the rules of a local organization. Maybe it's a club that like a RC club or something like that. Again, you can find out more about that at some of these resources that I've included here.
Do you know if they notify you if your registration is getting ready to expire?
They do. Yeah, and months and months ahead of time. If you're registered. So to give you an example, that Jima, go here.
Because I think it's been like 3 years since mine is. I registered mine, but I re-registered it last year when I got my remote ID. So
yeah, so that's probably why. Right. So on October 8th of last year, I received a notification from Drone Zone from the FAA that let me know that my one of my two registry, I'm not sure which one it was going to expire on April 6th. So I had from October till April, they gave me that much notification, and they sent subsequent reminders since then. So once you're registered, they will let you know when it's time to re-register. Now, that said, they don't let me know when my Part 107 is ready to re-register. So that I got to kind of keep track of myself. The important one to me, but
That's crazy.
yeah. So good question, Dreama. All right. So just kind of following up a little bit towards the end of the facts and figures, and I apologize that I'm boring you to death with some of that, but again, I hope you understand how important it is to know and understand all that. So always fly your drone safely and within the FAA guidelines. It's up to you as a drone pilot to know the rules and where it is and is not safe to fly. And I will say the FAA does a really good job of letting you know that. You know, there are plenty of resources out there, plenty of apps that you can utilize to know, am I supposed to be flying here or not? I will also say that as a drone pilot, I question sometimes. I'll go somewhere and I'm like, why this be a really cool drone place? I wonder, am I supposed to? I'm looking around going, is anybody else around here? Do I need to ask somebody? I did this when I went up to I'll tell you that when we get to the picture. But some of the resources that I use, far and above, Pilot Institute is probably your best resource for anything drone related, although they also get into training small plane pilots, commercial pilots, and whatnot. But I would check out Pilot Institute's YouTube channel. It's going to be a phenomenal resource for you, or their website, I guess. a couple of apps that I use, UAV Forecast and Flight Radar 24. And so I'm going to stop sharing this again. I'm going to show you both of those apps because I just think they're integral to me flying my drones and making sure that I'm doing what I need to do. So I'm going to again go back here to my iPad. I'll first talk about Flight Radar 24. So this is a paid app, but all the little dots that you can see, all the little yellow things, those are airplanes that are currently in the sky and flying. And you can see if you watch this, you see them moving very ever so slowly. But if I zoom out, just to give you a sense of how many planes are in the sky at any given time, all those little planes are using the airspace right now. So you can imagine throwing a million drones into the airspace at the same time as all these other planes are flying. Again, why you need to know what else is up there with you. I'm just going to zoom in here on Chicago. And you can see you have a helicopter flying here. You've got all kinds of other airplanes flying here. So again, you really need to be aware that you're not alone up there. Get right into, so the plane's on the ground. Here's one taxiing, getting ready to take off. I mean, it's a really cool app, and I use it regularly when I'm flying because I want to make sure, like, for instance, again, I'll go back to helicopters because there are constantly helicopters flying over Junction City here. That's where I tend to do a lot of my flying. And I may not hear them until they're right on top of me. So by utilizing this app, I can see if there was any in the sky when I'm going to launch. And if so, I may wait to launch until I know they've passed safely. Another app that I use, yes, go ahead.
I use the unpaid app. I'm wondering if it's worth paying. I can't control the size of the airplanes on my app. Is that part of the paid app?
I think it's worth paying for because you get a lot more information. So I'm gonna go up here and we're gonna just get this little guy here by Caroline. So it's going to tell me what kind of an airplane it is. It's going to tell me if they file a flight plan. It's going to tell me where it took off from and where it's headed. Here they can tell me it took off from Camp Douglas, but at Volk Field, but it doesn't tell me where it's headed. But it also,
I don't have that.
Yep, it also gives you they're flying at 2,900 feet. They're tracking at 342 degrees, so they are headed northwest, as you can see on the picture. But that tracking tells you the direction. So if you figured a circle, 0 at the top, 180 at the bottom, and base that, you can. And this is something you need to know for Part 107. You need to understand how to read a sectional chart and how all this plays into it. So it does give you a lot of information here on the paid app, Dreama, that you don't get just from the free version of it. I don't know.
The biggest thing is ads. I have most of that functionality, but is it a yearly subscription? Do you know? And
it is a yearly subscription. I'm in the silver plan. And there's one more above it, gold. I can't remember what I'm paying. It's like $20-30 a year, something like that. But I find it worthwhile for me to have it.
yeah, when there's a helicopter flying near your drone, you don't want an ad to pop up.
No, exactly right. Yeah. So that's one of the apps that I use on a regular basis. Another one is UAV Forecast. So this basically it's going to kind of look at the weather and say, should you be flying or not? And as you can see right now, today would be a good day. This is the first day all week that would be a good day for me to go flying. But you can get a little more detailed weather. You get sunset and sunrise times. You get the wind gusts, and this is the important thing. And I guess I didn't talk much about wind, but you can see at 400 feet, there's gusts of 400, gusts at 17 miles per hour, 400 feet. So the FAA suggests that you don't fly when winds are more than 14 miles per hour. I find that a little limiting. I've flown my drone up to about 24. And in fact, in here, that's what I've got it set for, is I want it to tell me if the winds are more than 24 miles an hour at 400 feet, it's going to show a warning and say, nope, it's not good to fly. So a good example of that, let's go to next Friday. And it's looking at data out ahead of time, so it helps you plan events if you have to do it. So for instance, last Friday, week ago Friday, I had a real estate shoot to do. I needed to do some drone work, but the conditions were not favorable to doing drones. And I watched that all week hoping it would change, but it did not. So I let my realtor know that, okay, we can do indoor pictures, but we're probably not going to get the drone stuff for a period of time until the weather calms down and I can get out there and do that. So as you can see, next Friday at about 9 o'clock, it's saying that at 400 feet, the winds are going to be at 34 miles per hour, just at ground level, 23 miles per hour. So next Friday is going to be a pretty windy day. So I know that it's not a day that I'll be able to go flying. And it gives you all this other information: cloud cover, visibility, the temperature. Temperature plays a big role in flying. You wouldn't think so, but when you're flying in the wintertime, for instance, if it's cold enough and it's humid enough, you can get icing on your props. And if you get icing on your props, your drone is coming down. There is no de-icer to spray like we do on airplanes. So you just have to watch those conditions and be aware of that, know and understand your drone and what it can handle and what it can't handle. Flying in the wintertime is one of my favorite times to fly, and I just think you get some awesome pictures at that time of year, but you just have to be well aware that you could get icing on your drone. Your battery life is certainly not going to be anywhere near as long in the cold weather. Conversely, in hot weather, our batteries are rated much like our camera batteries. Who else but me has ever had a camera shut down in the hot weather? I've had it happen a number of times where the heat and humidity were so great that my camera just shut down. And think about if you're flying your drone and it's 107 degrees out and it's about 90% humidity, how is your battery going to deal with that? So again, knowing and understanding your equipment and flying safely at all is very, very important. So those are two apps that I use on quite a regular basis. I do have other apps. DJI, I've got one for insurance. So if I'm doing a commercial job, I'm going to be buying extra insurance for that job just to make myself covered in case something does happen. So there's a myriad of different apps out there, but those are the 2 or 3 that I really use, probably more than anything. So let me get back to my program here.
Marty, while you're doing that, Rich Fisher is asking, he doesn't have cellular on his iPad. Can he use his iPhone, or is the screen too small?
You can, either way, you don't need cellular to fly.
Yeah, but to use, I think, the apps and that is, I think.
Right. Yeah, I guess, right. If you're out with the apps, right. And I do those apps through my phone, not through, so I have dedicated controllers for both of my drones. So I'm not looking at those apps on my controller, but if you want to fly with your iPad, but have your phone there to look at your apps, would be the way to do that. Any more questions? I see there's some stuff in the chat. I don't know if you've been following the chat there or not.
Yeah, I'm pretty much covering it. There's recommend getting blanket liability insurance. You've really covered that somewhat. And then we got Hubert would like to know about recommendations on the purchase, where and what to buy these days.
Sure. Let's save that one till the end, because
Yeah.
that can open up a whole bunch of other discussions. Okay. Well, and I guess I'll just finish up this slide here. Some of the other YouTube channels I follow.
Yeah, we're only seeing your. We're not seeing your slide. We're seeing your talk layout part.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that? Let's try that again. Is that more better?
There we go. Yep.
Hey. Thanks, Jeff. So some of the other YouTube channels that I follow and have for quite a long time, 51 Drones, Billy Kyle. So 51 Drones is a guy up in North Dakota, and he's just phenomenal. Billy Kyle is in Pittsburgh, I believe. He does a lot of commercial work. Drone Valley is a engineer. I don't know if he's retired now or not, but he's an engineer. So he will do reviews on equipment, and he'll present it back to you in a way you can understand, utilizing his engineering background. Idaho Quadcopter does a lot of product reviews. Drone Creative, same thing, but he'll get into a little bit more detail on the finer features of the drones. And then UAV Coach, much like Pile Institute, you can go there and learn about Part 107 and whatnot. So those again are some of the resources that I use on a regular basis. And I should just do that right now if I put that in the chat. And I'm just going to add this file into the chat for my show notes before I forget. And we'll go into my pictures. So I will say I am not a videographer. Drones have me dabbling in it a little bit, just because they're so capable of doing so much that it is kind of fun to shoot something like that. I'll also say this: I'm still very nervous about flying over water. The drones don't know you're over water, so it's definitely a mental thing on my part. And someday maybe I'll get over it. But like this shot of the pedestrian bridge going into Louisville, that's the Ohio River, and I really was not over the river. I was pretty much over land when I was still shooting this. I just get really, really nervous about that I'm going to be the guy that has something happen to the drone and it's going into the drink and I'm out, thousands of dollars or whatever. So, but that said, water and drones give you just awesome pictures. So any of
You
you
have
that
to
were
be
up,
careful flying over water because sometimes especially if you get down low, close to the water, the height can confuse the drone if the signal reflects.
yep, that's correct, Dreamer. So it thinks that you're lower to the ground, and it might actually decide to land on its own because it thinks it's on its way down. So yeah, try and stay higher. Uh, I mean, yeah, you can certainly do it. People do it every day. I'm just still very nervous about it. And that's after flying for 6 years, and I'm still nervous about it.
Yeah,
We
the
got a
water's
lot
going to reach
invested.
up and pull it down.
Yeah, exactly. You know, you got a lot of money invested in these things, and it's going to be hard to recover a drone sitting in the middle of a river or Lake Superior or Lake Michigan or Bay of Green Bay or whatever. You know?
Yep.
So,
There's probably a few drones out there.
oh, I'm sure there probably are. But here I got a little brave. I did get out over Lake Michigan, and when I shot this one, so I was proud of myself. Dreama has a really cool picture here at sunrise. That I think, were you looking kind of from the same angle-ish, or were you? I don't remember if yours was right. Oh.
I don't remember which picture. I have one that all of my pictures are sunrise or sunset. I have several of Cana Island with the sun in the picture looking back towards in the direction of Green Bay.
Yeah, I don't remember which one I see. I just remember seeing one that you just. I thought, wow, that's really nice stuff.
Yeah, I have one that has a whole island that has the sun in the background. But the one
Okay.
that I think I've shown most is closer up. It's more like this
Yeah, I was
angle.
gonna say it's close. Yeah, it is more close up to the tower, right? So, you know, I'm not a world traveler. I'm lucky if I get out of Portage County anymore. But I find a lot of creative things just to shoot right around here. So probably 7-8 miles from my house, we've got a cranberry farm. Some friends of mine know the owners, so they asked permission to go out and photograph when they were harvesting. And I thought it just made for some pretty cool stuff. A view that most people don't see. You see a lot of cranberry harvesting on the ground, but to see it from this angle just kind of brings it to a whole different level of viewpoint. So that's Lake Dubay in the background in the fall. And yeah, okay, so I popped up the color of the trees a little bit, but the color has to be there to bring it out. So I thought it was a beautiful sunrise. Whoop, sorry. This is just our village park, right from literally from my backyard. And I'm 4 blocks away from this, but I mean, it was spectacular conditions to shoot. So I just thought it made for a neat picture. Is it dramatic rock formations out west? No, but you know, this picture, I think it has a lot of impact, even though it's just a local picture. I use it on a website that I do for the village, and it just really kind of showcases things. So your pictures, I guess, don't always have to be spectacular award-winning pictures. There's a lot more uses for drone photography than that. This always fascinates me, that hovering at 200 feet, that I can capture fireworks and be that sharp. I don't know why it works, but the cameras on the drones are really just that good that you can get away with doing this.
Marty, we got Rich talking about that stuff. Can you do regular photo methods such as focus stacking and HDR?
You can do some HDR with it. It shoots it internally with HDR, but photo stacking they're not really designed to do something like that. And HDR, yeah, they have filters built in that you can shoot in HDR, although I don't really recommend it because, you know, you can probably do a better job in post-processing. You can shoot in RAW format, although much like the rest of my photography, I choose to shoot JPEGs. But you can capture in RAW, and again, you can capture, as you saw, you can capture video.
I've heard that the Mavic 4 Pro is going to have a polarizer filter built in. Do you know if that's an actual polarizer or just a filter that?
I think they said it was a neutral density filter.
Oh, yeah,
ND, not a
that too.
polarizer. Yeah. And that's, I guess that remains to be seen, but it does sound like a neutral density. But then the question is, at what number? I mean, are they going to make it a variable, or is it going to be a set neutral density? Stay tuned. In about a month, we'll probably find out.
Yeah, that'll be handy for video because that's
Well,
where you
and
usually
that's-
run into the problems.
Yep, that's exactly right. And so people who use their drones for video work, there's always add-on filters you can put on it for that. But that'll be a huge
Yeah.
development if they can add it right in where you don't actually have to clip it on the front. And then if you can turn it on and off, because you don't always necessarily want it on there. And if you're using the snap-on ones, that means you got to land and take off in order to change it out.
Be nice if you could fade it in and out too on the neutral density as the drone turns and goes towards the sun. If you could put the neutral density on.
Yeah, I guess
Fade
like
it.
I say, it's gonna remain to be seen how they do that. But I will say DJI has got to be one of the most innovative companies in the world when it comes to this stuff. So I'm sure they're listening to their customers, and they're going to try and build something that is really going to be just what they need. All this said until the government says we can't have them.
Yeah.
This, I wish I put in my picture of my buddy and I standing in front of this. This is Chris Sadu was a world champion bareback rider and a country music artist, and he passed away from liver cancer a number of years ago. And they erected this huge bronze, and it's actually bronze statue in Casey, Wyoming for him. And I have a picture of my buddy and I standing about here, and we look like little ants compared to this thing. And again, it's just one of those things that, yeah, you can look at it from the ground, you can get some pictures from the ground, but to understand the true scale of it, seeing a drone picture of it, and I wasn't that high. I was probably only up maybe, I don't know, 70, 80 feet, something like that to take this picture, which I should point out. You know, yeah, we can fly to 400 feet, but I would bet that most of my drone work is done more at the 1 to 200, maybe 250 foot range than it is up at 400. And Dream, I think you'd probably agree with that.
Yeah. Sometimes even 20, 30 feet.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, you just need to sometimes just get a little better perspective. So again, here we are at a fair and people roaming all over, although this was pretty much the fair was just getting ready to shut down. So it was late at night. So most of the people were gone. And again, I picked an area that I just knew that I'd be safe flying without people walking under me and around me. But, you know, we've all been to fairs. We've all probably taken pictures from the ground at fairs, but seeing it from this perspective just is really, really cool. So the Liney Brewery, a sad day for Chippewa Falls, unfortunately. Now that Miller Coors has decided to shut this particular location down, the you know, where it was all started. But I went up there one day last year, about this time last year, as a matter of fact, and I thought, God, I really want to get a drone picture of this place. So I walked inside to the information desk, and I introduced myself, and I said, hey, I'd really like to try and get a drone picture. Is that allowable? Well, I don't see why not, but you know what? Let me go check. So she went and checked, and she came back a little while later and said, yeah, it's you can do it. Just don't fly over people and don't fly between the buildings. I said, not a problem. So somebody there obviously knew the rules for flying drones to be able to have that as the answer. But I will say that this day, it looked real pretty, and it was kind of chilly out, but winds were coming. And I mean, the forecast said winds would be picking up and there will be 40, 50 miles an hour. And so I had pretty limited time. So I got set up. I went up, and I got up about maybe, I don't know, a couple 100 feet, and my drones will get a warning on them if the winds are too strong for it to fly without getting knocked out of the sky. So I had a high wind warning come up. I'm like, oh crap! So I quick took 2 or 3 pictures. I started bringing it down, and I got down to maybe, I don't know, under 100 feet, and the warning went away. So I got a couple more pictures, but literally, while I was taking those pictures, I'm watching the wind pushed the drone away from me. These drones are usually so stable that when they're hovering, they won't vary by less than 6 inches. Well, when I saw the wind pushing it, I'm like, oh boy. So I brought it down about as quick as I could before it was in the creek there. I did not want to have to go fish my drone out of that creek. But I guess my main point takeaway from that is, if you are flying somewhere like this, ask permission, especially on private property. Flying over public space is one thing, but if you're flying over private property, just don't assume it's okay to fly there. Seek out and get permission to do that. This was one of the very early pictures I took, one of the first pictures I ever took with my drone, the first time I had it up flying. And my drones have a beginner mode on it, so it only lets you go up to like 50 feet and only fly out, I don't know how many feet from you. So I was just literally testing the waters with it to understand how this thing really works. But I thought it was still kind of a cool picture. And, you know, then you get stuff like this with the long shadows. And again, you just don't see this from the ground. You only see this from the drones. And I just wanted to point out again, most of these pictures are literally right in my neighborhood here. And they're still pretty cool stuff. I cannot duplicate this picture if I had to. I do not know why or how I made this look like a miniature train set, but it isn't. That is real life size at a historic park, and I honestly can't tell you. I can tell you how I did like the soft glow back here. Those are filters, you know. We've all used glow filters, I'm sure, but why the perspective came out this way, I don't know, but it sure made for a really cool picture. At least I think so. So again, you'd think I'm flying right over my cousins here, but I'm really not. I'm back from them, and because the camera can tilt up and down as well as side to side, I'm back far enough. I brought the camera up, and I was still able to achieve a picture like this without breaking the rules and flying directly over them. Just a little Christmas display here in the neighborhood, which, you know, you drive by this on the road and it looked really cool, but you see it from above and it just, again, a whole different dimension to see it as. The same thing with this one. This is in Marshfield. They do this every year where they put out billions and billions of lights. But I just thought it was kind of a cool way to see it. I'm within probably half a mile of an airport here, but it's an uncontrolled airspace. There are heliports. This is again in Marshfield, so you got MedFlight flying in and out of there all the time. So I had to be pretty conscious of what was going on around me in the sky when I went up to take the picture. Heard you talking about Holy Hill here. I am quite a ways away. I don't know exactly. This is really cropped in from what the wide scene is. You can't just throw up the Holy Hill and throw your drone up and take pictures. So I was meandering down the side roads until I found an area that I could still see it. And I thought this might work. Threw the drone up and got a couple shots and came back down. So I only wish that it was in the fall and you had all that great color, but it is what it is.
Yeah, they have signs all over their property, no drones.
Yeah. So I'm sure it's one of those places, even if you went in and asked, they're probably going to tell you no. So this was a shot that I just thought really kind of came out really cool, because you've got the sweeping road here, just kind of leads you right back into the fire equipment. Anyway, it was just kind of a neat shot. I know the deputy chief there, so this is in Amherst, so I sent him a copy of it. So, I mentioned earlier I do some real estate work with my drone. We had a little subdivision being built here in Junction City, and I documented the whole process. This is the first foundation that went in. The builder happened to be a friend of mine, so I thought it'd be kind of a cool little project. So as this progressed over the course of a year, I kept going up and shooting it, and and now I'm about ready to put a video together for him of all this. This is in New London, Highway 54, at Highway 45. Just kind of a neat little place. Nobody was around that day, so I thought it'd be a cool picture. I always wanted to do this, and I thought perfect day, so I spent a bit of time there photographing this. Again, just different perspectives that you don't normally get. Just a snow groomer out on the trail. I kind of had to chase him down and stop him so I can get up in the air to do this picture. So we kind of staged it a little bit, but again, it's just the perspective that you don't normally see. As I mentioned, wintertime is kind of one of my favorite times to fly. You just, the landscape just looks totally different. There is so much going on in that video. That's what makes it fun. I mean, you got trucks coming and going. You got these guys chopping at the ice. You got the ice cutter cutting up more ice. It's just kind of a fun thing to see. And again, I could take a video from the ground and kind of accomplish the same thing, but I just think that the drone viewpoint just makes it that much more engaging.
We didn't have much of a winter this year, Marty. Did you get to cut the ice this year?
Yeah, we did. First time in 3 years. That video was a bit old. This is called a droney. So instead of a selfie, you do a droney when you do this with the video, with the drones. So yeah, we did ice cutting. I couldn't fly because it was snowing all day. So I didn't want to get up into that mess. And anyway, that is the end of my presentation. I hope I haven't bored you all too much. I know that it's a lot to take in, but it's a lot to know and understand. So if you're just considering buying a drone. I think that hopefully this will give you enough information to help you make an educated decision whether it's something you really want to invest in or not.
Are you getting prepared for the upcoming, if it hasn't already come out, the Part 108 Reauthorization Act?
Yeah, we'll see. That stuff moves at the that's been coming for even longer than before I was even flying. So with the government, things move at a snail's pace. So
Especially right now.
I guess I'm not going to be too concerned about it till it actually hits.
Yeah, they're supposed to they have a BVLS committee, beyond line of sight,
Visual line of sight, right? Yep.
that's working on the regular standardization for that.
Yeah, and really, that's a lot of that is going to be geared more towards your WalMarts, your UPS, whoever, these bigger drones that are going to be used for doing deliveries. That Part 108 is really going to be more about them than, and we're still going to be under Part 107 more than likely. Now, that's not to say that doesn't open up job opportunities for a guy like me. I'm already an established drone pilot. I've already got my Part 107. How much more would it take to get my Part 108 and go to work for one of these companies flying drones? I just think it's going to be an interesting time for drones and for flight in general within our airspace.
So
So
you
I-
have your commercial license. How much commercial work are you doing and what kind?
So mostly real estate, but again, anything. So, for instance, the pictures of the fairgrounds. They hired me to come and take those pictures so they can use those pictures on their website. Well, now that's in a furtherance of a business. So that is commercial work. Even though they look like kind of fun, cool pictures, yeah, they are. But the ultimate goal of that was that they were going to be used to further a business. So again, you have to understand how the FAA defines commercial. So let's say that let's say my ice cutting, if somebody, let's say a marketing firm said, "Ooh, hey, we can really use that picture to help promote this type of event." If they're going to use that commercially, again, whether they're paying me or not doesn't matter. It's commercial use. So I guess to kind of answer your question in a roundabout way, I do a lot of commercial work, just depending on how my pictures are ultimately going to be used.
Mhm.
Marty, we got. Oh, go ahead. Was that Clint?
I'm just going to reiterate, do you
Oh,
have any
Hubert.
website that you would recommend, or if you wanted to get into this stuff as far as equipment? I've been on the BH photo thing while you've been talking, and they have a DJI Mini 4, all kinds of gear. And I even saw a Maverick, I think, but those are pretty high end.
Mavic, yeah.
They're pretty high end.
Yeah,
type of things.
I'm really partial to DJI's equipment. It has to be probably the most user friendly, the most stable equipment to use out there. I've got friends who've got one's got a Unique, he's got an Altool. Those, when they're flying, they tend to lose connection to from their controller to their drone on a fairly regular basis, which is scary, because if you lose that connection, now what's going to happen to that drone? And it's very seldom that I have ran into that. And there's safety features that DJI builds in that nobody else really does. So all this talk about banning DJI drones because it's a Chinese company and that they're stealing our technology and all that, it's all a bunch of hogwash. Any flight data that I have on my drone stays on my drone. It does not get transmitted to China or anywhere else. So that argument could be thrown right out the window. But the politicians that are really pushing for this, because it's a Chinese company, are doing a disservice, because every safety agency that and the bulk of them have DJI drones are going to not be able to use those drones for their needs. You know, if we had an instance here in Wisconsin Rapids just last week where a 59-year-old woman got lost in the woods. Fire department was called out. The fire department doesn't own a drone, but they partner with a company out of town, or organization out of Tomahawk that does just this. They come in. So in a short time, they were on site. Within a minute of finding this woman with the drone, they had personnel there to save her. So public safety committee agencies are going to lose this ability to have reliable equipment if the government goes through with banning them. It's just a shame. So when my drone, if I lose connection to my drone, I can choose what's going to happen with that point. So I can choose to say, okay, if I lose connection, stop and hover and hope that the connection re-engages. Or if I lose connection, I can tell it land where you're at and it can come down, or I can tell it to return to home. And I mentioned earlier about the return to home, and that's why it's important to make sure that that home point gets set up, because I'd rather have it come back to me. Another thing that happens is if I'm flying and I'm not paying attention to my battery and how much is left in that battery, I set it at, I think I set it 25%. So when the battery gets down to 25% of power, it's automatically going to come home. If I don't set that, it's crashing somewhere, and then I got to go find it. So these are some of the things. It's the technology that DJI builds into their drones that, to me, makes them hands down the smart choice to go to. Now, which drone do you get? Do you get a mini? Do you get a Neo? Do you get it? So then you have to start asking yourself, what am I going to do with my drone? So some of these newer drones, the Neo and the Flip, I think those drones are really designed for social media people who are doing their little videos, and what it allows them to do then is they throw the Neo up and it can record them, and they don't have to hold their camera out on the stick or set it on a tripod. They can move around and walk around. Those are what those drones are really for. They're not designed to do the kind of photography that you and I would do.
Yeah, the DJI Mini 4 I was looking at here on B&H, they got different packages with it. Like, I'm assuming that you would get the what they call that?
Fly more package, yeah. Yeah, so
and charging, it says 2 controllers, RC. Means like it's got its own screen there.
Yeah, so the RC2 has got its own screen. That's the controller I use. You get extra batteries. I always recommend buying the Fly More package because one battery is just not going to be enough. So yeah, and then the mini. There's the Mini 4 and there's the Mini 4 Pro. So those are 2 separate drones.
I didn't know about there's a Mini Pro 4. I guess is what I'm looking at here. So
yeah, the Mini 4 Pro. Yeah.
I've been flying with people who flew with their phone instead of the remote controller. I can see pretty good with my remote controller, but I've seen people that can't see the screen when it's bright sunlight when they're flying with phones or iPads or whatever.
Yep, that's a good point. I even have on one of my controllers. So the controller I use for my Mavic 2 Pro is 1,000 nits on the screen. It's a very, very bright screen. The controller I use for my Mini 3 Pro is, I think, 750 or 800 nits, and there's a considerable difference in the brightness to it. So on the Mini, I've actually got a cover for it that helps shade the screen a little bit, that makes it easier to see. But that's a very good point. If you're flying with your phone, there's a few different things that can happen. If you don't turn off your notifications, you could be flying and all of a sudden you get a text pop up or a phone call interrupt your signal. Well, if it's interrupting your signal, that's not a good thing. So I think the safest bet is to get a dedicated controller if you can afford it.
Yeah. I suppose if you're going to get one, you might as well get it before all this tariff crap kicks in again. So
Yeah, and exactly, because at some point, like Grima was talking about the Mavic 4 Pro that is hopefully launching in about a month. Well, DJI launching it and us being able to get it here might be two different things. You know, they might hold those in customs and, you know, for whatever stupid reason, and then we may be not be able to get them right away.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think
and
I
the
ordered a
tariffs are
couple
gonna
T-shirts
right.
from a company that actually produce all that stuff someplace in China or somewhere. And it's been 3 months and I haven't seen the T-shirts yet. I keep getting these emails. Well, they're still in production. They're being held up someplace, I guess. But
Right.
yeah, goofy
All this,
world out there.
all this also applies to Autel. Autel is a Chinese company, and they've added that to
It
the possible
it
ban.
it applies to almost every drone brand. There's almost no drones. Well, there are no drones made for the consumer that are made in the United States. So pretty much any branded drone you're going to buy that's a consumer-based drone are coming out of China, and they're going to end up banning them all. And for again, I can't really speak to like Altel and Unique and some of those other brands. I just know with my DJI, nothing is being transmitted that I don't want transmitted out of my drone.
Yeah, they stopped that when they were having the big debate in Congress. There is a company in Texas that's producing a duplicate of the
Well,
DJI in different
right,
color,
right,
but it's like
yeah,
twice as much.
exactly, right, and it's designed more towards enterprise than it is the consumer. So you know, yeah, I don't know. It's a bad controversy. What else we
Marty,
got, Jeff?
we got Kenny Bowman asking about the cameras in the drones, uh, what brands or megapixel, and then a follow-up was, are there interchangeable lenses or they're fixed focal length? I believe they got
Okay.
zoom lenses built in, don't they?
Yeah, so on my two different drones, as I mentioned earlier, my Mavic 2 Pro, so I bought that in 2019. That has a fixed focal length lens. Like, don't ask me what it is. I can't tell you that, but it's fixed focal length. But it is a Hasselblad camera. So I will say I don't know exactly when it happened, but a number of years ago, DJI basically bought a controlling interest of Hasselblad, and at the time, people were going, "Well, why would they want to do that?" Well, this is why they want to do it. So they're introducing really spectacular cameras on their drones. My Mini 3 Pro has a little different camera on it. I don't know that it's actually considered a quote unquote Hasselblad camera, but I guarantee you they're using technology from Hasselblad. And it has a zoom lens on it. So you got a wide view and a telephoto view. And again, don't ask me the specs. I can't tell you. I should know that stuff, but I'm just not that intuitive. When the Mavic 4 comes out, that will have three separate cameras on it: a wide, a standard, and a zoom. And it's gonna be. I mean, all the early indications of what I've seen on this drone is it's going to be a spectacular drone. And again, the Fly More package with that, with the new, of course, adding a new controller. So now you're getting close to buy the drone, buy the extra batteries, buy the controller. You're up at almost $5,000 to buy this. But again, it's really designed towards filmmakers. People who are doing a lot of video work. It's really going to be targeted towards them. As far as interchangeable lenses, so some of the bigger drones, the Inspire series, some of those types of drones that DJI has, you can actually mount small mirrorless cameras on them or small DSLRs, which then you could put interchangeable lenses on it.
Yeah.
I saw a commercial guy over in Michigan. He was filming for PBS at the time. I thought he said Ken Spurn's documentary, and I was watching him for quite a while. How he's taking that was a big monster. That was really a good size drone. It had to be at least 2 feet across anyway. So it's pretty neat.
Yeah, I saw a surveyor yesterday out in a farmer's field surveying with a 4-foot wingspan drone. So
Yeah, and
yeah,
agriculture has really embraced drone technology, and I mean they've got drones that'll do spraying because they could do really targeted spraying with them. Um, it just that's an industry that has really taken full advantage of what drones can do. But there again, you're doing it commercially, so now you got to either do one of two things: either if you're gonna, as a farm, have your own drone and be doing this stuff, you've got to train that person on how to
yeah,
fly a drone. But then it gets more complicated than that because now you're spraying. So the FAA has, and the EPA, and all these other organizations have real specific rules. So not only do you need to know the drone rules, you also need to know about all the chemicals and how all that interacts with all this too.
yeah, yeah. Can get crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Schulis wants to know, is a iPad mini better than the unit's remote, bigger to see and use?
I
But
really don't know. I've never tried it.
I
I
don't think
just
it's as bright enough, probably
Yeah, I
for
don't know what the
outside.
nits. I don't know what the nits are on it. I can say that I really am a firm believer that your dedicated controller is a much better way to go. I mean, if you're gonna try and save something because you have a mini and you think that's gonna be better, I just think because all the technology that's built into the controller itself is just gonna react much more efficiently with the drone than putting a third party device into the mix.
Yeah. Well, that seems to be all the questions we've got, unless anybody else has some questions.
Hey, Marty, question for you. Is when you said about like commercial, is there a separate section for Part 107 to have a commercial kind of license?
The Part 107 is the commercial license.
Okay.
Part 4089, whatever the hell it is, yeah, that's the general drone stuff, and then Part 107 gets carved out of that to be just for drone operators. Now, you could be a small plane pilot and have a license for that, but that doesn't make you eligible to fly a drone. You actually have to have a separate certification, even if you're certified to fly a Cessna or a Piper or whatever. If you want to fly drones, you got to get the Part 107. And as I mentioned earlier, to get a 107 is not too far off from getting a private pilot's license.
Yeah, it's almost identical. There's hardly anything. I think it's the radio and some of that stuff that's not in there. So if you got your own private pilot's license, good bet that you're going to be able to pass a drone 107C because
Exactly.
it's, when I looked at it, it was so close to what ground school would be like.
Correct.
That there was hardly any difference. And the same thing too, if you got your 107, it wouldn't be that much harder to get your private pilot's ground school covered.
But you don't have to get the 107. I'm a recreational flyer and I don't feel that limited.
No, and that's exactly right. I mean, again, you're not taking any of your images and trying to have them marketed in one form or another. You're using them for your own purpose, and that's the whole key to flying recreationally. Myself, I knew that if I was going to get into this, I wanted to do some of that, so I took that extra step. But you're right, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Well, what is nice about having a commercial is if anyone comes along your path, like, hey, I'd like to get, some pictures or some video, so that you're providing a service. So it's like, well, you know what? If they're going to pay me, and I'll give you a perfect example. I had to do, I took it upon myself. I had a private event to go to in Waukesha Airport, and it was like a grand opening for Capital Flight. Well, the one guy was so impressed with my pictures, he wanted to buy the pictures right there on the spot. So there's sometimes opportunities like that come along. Like, okay, well, hey, I was going to do it for free, but if you're going to pay me to do it, okay, even better.
Right. Yeah, and again, the commercial rating, so to speak, isn't dependent on whether you're actually physically paid or not. It's just how the images or footage will be used. If it's used to further a business in any way, shape, or form. Now, there's been YouTube channel guys that were doing things and posting it on their channel, and the FAA is going, well, you're not a Part 107 pilot, so you either have to take that down or we're going to go after you and find you. There was a really notable case just recently, a guy out east, I can't remember if it was Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, something like that, for a couple of years kept defying and was doing so many things that he was not supposed to be doing. And finally, the FAA really cracked down on him, and he was looking at fines of well over $200,000. He did a plea deal with the FAA. He basically had to take his drone down. He's banned from ever flying drones. He did have to pay a small fine, but it was nowhere near the $200,000. But basically, because he thought that he was above the law and didn't have to follow the rules like everybody else, finally they went after him. And there's been a whole bunch of other YouTube people that just are doing things blatantly wrong and yet posting that on their channel. And of course, the FAA is watching this. I mean, somebody has to monitor all this to make sure that we're all staying within the limits. And it doesn't take much to figure out what's blatantly wrong and what's maybe a indiscretion, let's just say. And so, again, the FAA is about safety. They want to educate you. So if you have something happen, so let's say that I did crash my, I have to legally report that crash to the FAA, regardless of whether I damaged property or anything else. That has to be noted in the FAA that, you know, there was an FAA accident. So that's the way they consider that. But will most people, if they just crash your drone into a tree, report that? Probably not. You know, if they crash it into a car, well, now you got a whole different scenario.
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because when you think about bird strikes, you know, on airplanes, well, you can easily get bird strikes on. For some reason, the birds like some of the drones.
I've had them chase mine. That's scary because they'll hit it and knock it out of its orbit, and you're crashing. Dreamer, go ahead.
I've never had one. I've flown around birds. I was in a swallow, what do you call it? The group flying. And I was afraid they were going to attack it, but they fly so fast, they know. I've never had a bird attack my drone.
I've had them chase it. And one of the best ways to counteract it is if they're chasing it, fly up, just go straight up. And they'll come in like this.
Yeah.
So if you get up and away from them and then come back down in, but yeah, they'll attack them.
Yeah.
Marty, can you go over real quickly maybe about insurance? You know, let's say whether you have commercial or you do it recreation, and then ballpark price.
Yeah, so recreationally, I don't do anything with insurance. Well, I shouldn't say that. I do have a rider on my homeowner's insurance that if something happens recreationally, they'd be covered. But so Skywatch.ai is who I use, and I usually just go under the hourly and do this. So, you know, I know I got a flight coming up. You go through and you do this whole planner, and so let's see what it takes me to here. So, you got to go in and set all this stuff up, but $1 million liability and all that. So, say when I'm out doing commercial work, I'll go through this and get that short-term policy. If I'm shooting a real estate job and I crash into that house and it does damage, their insurance company's coming after me. Well, I'm not rich, so I want to make sure that I've got myself covered.
Yeah, I always thought that would be a great idea, like, let's say you get real estate, let's say you do a $10 million, beautiful house on the lake or whatever, and God forbid something happens, it'd be nice to make sure that your coverage and how to go by it.
Yeah. So again, that's through a app that's called Skywatch, and that's one of the ones that I found that was reasonable enough that and I just it's a job, so I just tack it on to the cost of what I'm charging my client.
It
They
is
have a
nice. Go ahead.
they have a .ai on their end of their URL. Does that mean they're that's in Australia, they're AU. Where do you know where they are?
I you know what, I don't know if I ever really looked into that. I just know I'm covered when I got it. So let's see if it tells me.
Yeah, if they're not in the United States, I'd be a little concerned about getting paid if something happened.
That's a good valid point.
.ais can be from anywhere.
Yeah, and they're probably the leader in the industry, Dreama, for doing this. So I don't have any apprehensions about using them.
I like the idea that, what's nice is like you can charge, hourly, like, get insurance
Right.
hourly instead of having to
Right.
pay for the whole year or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't do enough of it that I feel like I got to be spending hundreds of dollars a year on it. But again, I'll add it into a job and just say, it's part of the cost. So
Well, Marty, I have to say, I thought you did a really fantastic, thorough, detailed job on this drones and that. A lot of great information, great presentation, great, thank you for sending out the PDF file. A lot of great information on there.
well, I appreciate that, Clint, because I know it could be nauseating. There's just so much, but I just know how important it is for people to understand this. And I think that a lot of people just casually starting to look at this have no clue that it's that involved.
It is important. I mean, I still like, like, yeah, I got my certificate, the 107. It's like, hey, I had the proper training, not, let's say, a novice in that, like, well, you do have the proper, background, terminology, schooling, teaching, learning, whatever. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's one reason why I haven't gotten a drone yet. It's I knew that it was going to take a lot of work to be a drone pilot, because most of my stuff would have been considered commercial. If I even took a shot and thought I'd use it for fine art photography, boom, it's commercial now. And it's so simple to pop into commercial and not realize it. And the FAA is out looking for those people that do that stuff.
Steve, I did a workshop with Daniel Anderson up in Door County, and he said he would not take out a group of photographers. You asked in the chat about hands-on workshop. He would not take out a group of photographers because when you have 5 or 10 or God forbid 15 drones flying around together, it just doesn't work. He does individual workshops with 1 or 2 people.
Yeah, and I know I've talked to Dan about that, and he's pretty right. So when I did the that video at Marquette Lighthouse, there were actually 3 of us up there flying, 2 from our group, and then somebody else was there at the same time. So you weren't flying that morning because I know I talked to you about that.
Oh,
So I don't know who the other person was, but all I know is that really had to watch everybody else when we were flying there, and that's where having a visual observer really, really paid off, to have somebody else standing next to you, and because you're watching your controller, and you got to kind of know where your drone is at, but you also have to watch your controller to see what you're doing there. So all of a sudden you got another drone behind you. I'm like, where the hell did he come from? And so yeah, I can see.
I've flown with a group in Japan and Spain, and we were all close enough together that we could talk about our altitude, so that we made sure as long as we were at different altitudes, we were okay.
Would that be considered a crash course in photography?
Yeah.
Here's a
I-
perfect example. Here's a perfect example. I went on Norwegian Cruise Line took a sea cruise. It is forbidden. You're not even allowed to bring on board a drone. You know, let's say if you want to go to Mexico and that there might be a way, maybe if you get all this clearance and permission, but they would confiscate your drone if you brought it on.
Wow, that's interesting. So but it kind of leads into another good point. So everything I covered today are U.S. FAA rules. Every country is going to have their own rules for you to follow. So if you are going to travel with your drone, make sure you know what you're getting into when you go to those different countries.
Well, they
Also
were even
flying-
worried about the safety of the people on the ship, which makes sense. Like, hey, we
Right.
don't want to have any interference with the captain of the ship or anything.
Also, flying
it-
from a boat is a whole different ball game because a boat, if you return to home and the boat's in a different place, you got problems.
Yep. Home's always moving.
Yep, that's exactly right. So you can fly it. If you're out, let's say you're on your own pontoon boat, yes, you can launch and fly it from there. But you're right, Drummond. You gotta make sure that you're probably going to be manually landing it and not relying on return to home if something does happen. So you're certainly flying at a higher risk by doing that.
And if you're on a sailboat, you've got the problems with trying to fly it, land it, and catch it, whatever, with the rigging all around.
Right. Yeah. Jeff, I never would have believed we went 2 hours on this. I thought for sure it'd be an hour. I appreciate all the great questions today, though, guys. I mean, it shows that there's interest out there, and that's kind of why I put this together. So, again, I hope it didn't nauseatingly bore you to death, but I'm glad you all got something out of it.
I found it very interesting and scary at the same time.
Yeah.
So, any thoughts I had about drones?
Probably just went out the window.
Yeah. Thanks, Marty.
Well, it was a lot of good information. I think everybody needs to know that, like I said, that's why I haven't picked one up yet. It's not like go out to the store, buy it, and you're going to go fly it right away. You got a lot to think about and what you're going to do with it. So I think it was great to have all this info put out there for our group.
Marty, would you think about, let's say if anyone wanted to do commercial or whatever, do you believe they should probably do the training first, get your license, or your certificate before getting the drone?
Yeah, it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, Clint. I mean, I'll be honest. My friend Linda from Louisville is the one that got me involved with drones. She got her 107 first, and she started flying it. She's the one that kind of talked me into trying it. I kind of went in somewhat blind. I mean, I did a lot of research, but I bought it and started flying before I did my 107. But I knew in conversations with her that was the direction I wanted to head with it, regardless.
Okay.
But I think what happens is if you get a drone and like I started with one of the most expensive ones at the time. I mean, when I bought my Mavic 2 Pro and the state of the art controller they had then and the fly, I mean, I spent close to $3,000 on all that. That was quite an investment. Not really even knowing, am I even going to really, really like this or not? Certainly now when you can buy the minis for a few $100s, and use your phone at first if you want, and try and get a feel for, is this something I really want to go further into, and then you can invest in better equipment then. So yeah, it's a great question. I think it's a question that only you can answer yourself.
Yeah, thank you.
But again, I think that was part of the design of this program, is to really give you a much better idea of, hey, what am I getting into if I do this? And I saved Anthony how much money, Anthony?
Well, I think mission accomplished.
Yeah, there's a lot to think about. doing it. Looks like a lot of fun, but a lot to
You know, it
think
is. I will say that I have a lot of fun flying. It's when I do get the chance to do it, I wish I could do it more. It really is enjoyable. Um, uh, but I do it in a way that I know that I got to be really, really conscious about what's going around me.
And I'm
Yeah.
able to fly in a lot of places that I haven't been able to fly in before. I want to go out this afternoon, and because I live 3 miles from the Milwaukee airport, the whole area is in the area of the airport. And since they've removed the geofencing, I can now go out and fly my drone in some areas I couldn't before. All I have to do is get the Lance approval and fly, whereas it wouldn't take off before.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you that if you've been out since that happened. So what Jamie was talking about is DJI is very safety minded. In fact, to a fault, because for a long time, up until a couple months ago, they actually had our drones quote unquote geofenced. So because it's all GPS controlled, so to speak, they know exactly where we can and can't fly, or where we should or shouldn't fly. So, for example, in Stevens Point, I was photographing one of the businesses that I do a website for, and I was going to do some drone work for them. So I went to go try and launch my drone, and I'm like, it won't launch. Why will it not launch? And then came up, well, geofenced, and I need to get approval. I'm like, well, great. So the reason it happened, I think I can show you this here if you bear with me a second or two. Let's see here. Yeah, I think this will work. I just got to bring up a map here where it's going to show this. Yes, that'll be better. Yeah, this one will do it. Please stand by. That doesn't show it. Which map showed that? I'm sorry, guys. I'm looking for a map that showed the runways and where I should and shouldn't be flying, or where I thought I shouldn't be flying.
I used to not be able to fly in Oak Creek. In the main part of Oak Creek, there's a nice clock tower that I wanted to shoot, but it was restricted. And I've been out there with my drone and been able to take off in an outlying area, and I've even tried to fly in closer to that clock tower, and the DJI was restricting it and said, you can't fly here, back up, and it was threatening to take over my drone and send it return to home. And I
Yeah,
was frustrated with trying to shoot that clock tower, so now I can go shoot that. There's also a park near me that has a lake in it, and I want trees all around. I wanted to get up over the trees and get some pictures of the lake. And on one side of the lake, I could take off, and on the other side, it wouldn't take off at all.
well, I'm not finding the exact shot I want on this app, but I'll give you a sense of what happened. So this is Stevens Point Airport, north-south runway, east-west runway ish. So the photo shoot that I had was roughly down here. And what happens is this area here is under the direct approach to the airport. Now, Stevens Point Airport is a Class G airport. So DJI really shouldn't have restricted me at all because it's a Class G airport. I have all the rights to fly there. But because they wanted to make everybody safe, they said, well, yeah, but there could be an airplane that's going to fly right over you here because that's the approach to the airport. So we're going to have to make you ask permission to fly there. So I'm like, well, at the time, it wasn't like I can just get into it. They've since made the process much easier, but and it's really easy now because now DJI said, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to leave it up to each individual pilot to know where they're supposed to be flying and not flying, which is the way it should have always been. But because DJI is so safety conscious and they just wanted to make sure that people weren't flying in places they shouldn't be flying all the time, they kind of superseded the FAA is really what they did. Now, fortunately, they've stopped doing that, which has mixed results because the people who didn't care about the rules now can really screw things up for everybody else. But those of us who did follow the rules and knew them, now it makes it easier for us to do what we want to do, whether it's recreationally or commercially.
I liken that to an automobile company not allowing a car to run on a restricted area. And if you worked on an Air Force base, for example, your car would shut off at the gate. That shouldn't be up to the car manufacturer to
right, or take it one step further, and the car manufacturer says, no, we're not going to let you drive any faster than 55 miles an hour. We're going to restrict it for you, and that's basically what DJI did to the drone pilots. So again, they did it under the guise of safety, which I get, but at the same time, if all things being equal, we're all following the rules and doing what we're supposed to do, they shouldn't need to do it. Now, one of the reasons that I believe that they discontinued the practice was because what it said was, okay, we know exactly where your drone is at, and we're going to restrict you. So that means that they had access to our files and everything. Well, they've in doing this, they've taken away their own access to all of our drones.
which means they're less likely to be banned by Congress.
Well, that's their hope. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't really seem to be playing. That factor doesn't seem to be playing into this whole argument at all. I mean, this is just such a non-issue, but it's such a big issue that, yeah.
Well, politicians aren't expert in this stuff, and they meddle in some things that they don't just have no clue how they work. And there's a lot of that stuff happening, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, you are right.
I haven't noticed.
But the land system with the FAA is great because I put in where I am. You were showing the little square on your map when you were sharing, Marty, and you put it in and you go through that, and with 30 seconds, I get a text message with approval to fly. And
Exactly.
how long, where, how high.
Yep. So it's just important that they know where you're at, because that information, I think, may get fed into the local air traffic controller so that they can let the planes know then that, there might be drone activity in your area. So,
yeah.
So do the both of you, go ahead.
And they're really strict. When as I've said, people might have heard me before, I'm in the flight path of the airport, even though I'm 3.5 miles away from it. When the planes come over here and I'm looking at my flight radar app, I have noticed that they're a minimum of about 1,600 feet above when they're coming in for a landing. And if I can only go up to 400 feet, there should be no conflict there at all. Even I'm thinking of flying down near the airport, getting real close and getting some pictures of the planes coming in. A lot of the areas there, you can fly up to 50 feet, even right up almost to the fence of the airport. And so now I can do that. And I'm thinking of going out and trying to shoot and be within the legal limit of where I can fly.
When you guys both go out flying, do you plan a flight? Meaning, do you like kind of like an IFR? Do you guys both plan something like that?
I don't often. Some real estate properties I will. I'll kind of look at that ahead of time and see what I got to get into. But for most of my stuff, I'd say no.
Okay.
I typically don't. If I plan, it's kind of like any photography when I go out and I check photo pills to see when the sunset and sunrise is, and mostly for photography purposes. But if I'm near the airport, I need to plan if I'm gonna, you know, how high I can fly and what I want to shoot.
Well, we're well over your 2-hour time period, Marty.
Again, I never dreamed this would have gone this long. I thought for sure an hour and you'd be done and we'd be on other things, but
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
encouraging. That is encouraging to me that there was enough interest that people stuck around and listened.
Yep, yep. We're just starting to lose them all now that it's past noon. So I've been watching the count, and yeah, you kept everybody listening for quite a long time. So no, I think we'll end it there. Thanks everybody for coming. Again, next month we have Chris Scott talking about On One Photo Raw, and I'm working on other speakers as we get closer to summer. So with that, I'll say see you next month.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Great job,
Marty.
Great
Marty.
day.
Good
Thank you.
presentation.
Great job.
Yes, I know it's being sent to YouTube. Want to stop YouTube? I didn't ship Marty host to you, did I?
Participants. We're the participants. Panelists. No, you're host.
I can't stop my YouTube. Yeah, it's weird.
Host. The content of this